Hello, welcome to episode 2 of the Elevate Your Wellbeing podcast. I hope you are feeling well. And we had a full moon yesterday. Yes, I do love to talk about astrology. I didn't mention that at all in my little intro episode last week, but I will be mentioning little snippets of astrology and how I use that. But yesterday we had a full moon in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is my sun sign. I do love to talk, which is really why I do love the idea of a podcast and just sharing my thoughts, my views, my feelings on all things well-being. So last week we had a little introduction to myself, and you've been sending in your messages of little introductions of yourself. It's wonderful to get to know you all. And I'm going to dive into my yoga journey a little bit more, because I've had a few questions about that. So where to start? Well, like I said, last week in episode 1, I was about 15, and I can remember picking up a VHS video that my mum had, and it was a very typical of its age yoga teacher in a full-on leotard, very enthusiastic. And I will say this, I've always joked that I'm a bumper sticker yoga teacher. And the reason I say that is I do love a one-liner. I love a quote, and I will always share these during classes. And I just kind of joked that I'm that bumper sticker yoga teacher. I always share something and try and keep it short and sweet and relatable, even though I can go off on a bit of a tangent and have a bit of a talk, which is why I feel the podcasts are a great avenue for myself to share those thoughts and feelings. But the quote that this teacher shared really resonated with me many years later. I still hear her saying it. The more energy you use, the more energy you'll have. I'll say that again. The more energy you use, the more energy you'll have. And even at the age of 15, I can remember this stumping me as like, but surely we deplete ourselves. But when we don't move, when we just sit, we get so tired. Have you ever felt so tired at the end of the day and all you've done is sit? And if you have been in a class with myself in the last couple of years, you've heard me say this a lot, because I do like to focus on the glutes, to activate the glutes, I know that word will trigger some people, to activate, but to make sure the glutes are working properly. A lot of us have issues with our lower back. A lot of us have issues or think we have issues with our hamstrings, but we don't use our glutes in the way they're supposed to be used. We sit on them and we just make a very nice comfy cushion out of our buttocks. So we want to activate those glutes. And when we're sitting all day, we're not activating and using our glutes, but we're also depleting our energy levels. We work by moving, by creating heat. And I'm recording this, it's December in the UK, it's cold, and it can be so tempting to stay at home, wrap up warm, not move, just literally move from, if you're working from home, and a lot of people have really transitioned to working full time at home. So you've literally gone from your bed, maybe you've sat at your kitchen table, you've sat at your desk, and then you're sitting on your sofa, and then you're back to bed again. Then you are going to feel depleted in your energy levels. And that quote, the more energy you use, the more energy you'll have, has really resonated through me throughout my life, and especially as a yoga teacher, to help get you moving. So I always congratulate people when they arrive at class, whether it's online, whether it's in person, especially when it's cold and it's wet and it doesn't feel encouraging to get out and move, because you're doing something for yourself. And an hour a day is just 4% of your day, but an hour a day, an hour every day to go to a class might not be accessible, but can you do 10, 15 minutes? And that's only 1% of your day. And I will be diving into the 1% method in another episode. But that's, again, really where it stems from, this thought of making some time for you, just to move, Just stretch. So if you're sitting, have a go with me now, unless you're driving a car, then it's not possible. But just stretch your arms, wiggle your fingers, stretch your legs, wiggle your toes, point and flex from the wrists and the ankle joints to get your body moving. And that's always been a big thing for me growing up. I've always felt very energetic, very enthusiastic about moving your body, about doing yoga in particular. It's just a practice that resonates with me. And as I've grown older and grown into becoming this person that's taught yoga for over 10 years, and as I said last week, the title yoga teacher no longer really resonates with me because I think there's so much more to well-being that I think gets hidden under this shroud of yoga, and it can put people off. A friend of mine, we joke, I love yoga so much, and the thought of running really just doesn't appeal. No offense. If you love running, I salute you. I wish I could get into it. I love walking. Take me for a long hike with the dogs. Amazing. But running it doesn't click yet. And I still say yet because who knows? I'm not going to write anything off at all. But right now, it just doesn't click. And I've tried it. I've got running belts with the dogs, but it doesn't work for me yet. Maybe one day it will. But I have one of my best friends, she loves running to the point we made it a joke when we went to New York, and we were like, you've got to run around Central Park. It's got to be done. It's that bucket list thing. And I encouraged her to do it. And we had this running haha joke that she loves running so much, but then she likes to wind me up that she does not like yoga. And again, coming back to that trip in New York, I was like, I'm going to get you doing some form of yoga by the end of the week. And literally the only type of yoga I did was the legs up the wall pose, because that felt so amazing walking so far around Manhattan for a week. I mean, I think my pedometer clocked like 20,000 steps or something crazy on one day, or way more than that probably. But it would be the thing of, right, we get back to our hotel. You guys, there was three of us. You guys can jump in the shower first. I'm going to do some yoga. And I can remember literally just lying on the bed, stretching my legs at the wall, and this friend would get out of the bathroom. She's like, "You've been there all the time I've been in the shower." I'm like, "I'm going to be here again for another 10 minutes because our other friend's going in." And by the end of the week, I got a photo of her doing this pose. She's like, "It's so good because it really releases your back, it releases your legs." And it was just this funny joke of how yoga can make us feel, but it doesn't have to be that. And that's why I don't resonate as much with calling myself a yoga teacher anymore, because I really feel there is something for everybody. There really is a practice for everyone. There's a way that you can feel amazing in whatever way feels best for you. So, yes, I will talk a lot about yoga because that is my background, that is my passion. It's where I really started on this journey. But I'd love to share so much more than that. So, I loved yoga so much, I decided that as I was going through a few things in my life at a time that felt really chaotic, and I've had quite a few moments that have felt quite chaotic, and I'm sure they come out in their own unique episodes. But I decided that practicing yoga outside is amazing. I love practicing yoga outside. And it's one thing I've loved over the last couple of years, because practicing inside wasn't possible and we were forced to have these rules to not be right on top of each other. That's a whole other thing in itself, because the magnetic field of the heart only expands and extends up to 2 meters, and that baffles me that we were advised to stay separate from that. But anyway, we had this opportunity to start practicing outside again, and I jumped on it, and I've loved being back outside again. And it was a wonderful reminder of how I had come full circle. I was coming up for that 10-year anniversary of being a yoga teacher, of teaching yoga, offering yoga to all sorts of people, and just reminding myself, or being reminded of how those classes started, just by me grabbing my yoga mat and walking around the corner to a local park and flowing outside and just deciding I'm going to go home and start up a Facebook page and just say, I'm going to be here on this day, it's a bank holiday, it's a national holiday for the UK, so you shouldn't be working or you're unlikely to be working. Come and join me. It's completely free. And just to be with other like-minded people is amazing. It's magical in itself. And to be able to share that has been a absolute pleasure. And it was at a time where I'd recently moved back to an area where I still live and I grew up in, and was trying to find a job. All I could get was part-time. And I was very grateful for that because it encouraged me to go, okay, let's start a class up. And I started by hiring a local hall. And because I had my information out there, within sort of 5 or 6 months, I had a contact from a local Navy base, and they were asking if I could teach a yoga class. And at first, that typical thing of, surely this can't be true. Why would they want me to teach yoga? I've only just started teaching. But realistically, when I look back at it, I had been practicing yoga for years, and I did my teacher training 5 years before that with no intention of teaching. And it was just a bit of fun. And I think because for me it was a bit of fun, I had that passion, that joy to really share it. It's like, I love how this feels, and more people should get to feel like this, especially with mental well-being. And I think, again, a lot of you out there have commented about how connecting with your body through practices such as yoga and meditation and journaling, all these practices I love to teach and encourage and help people to create as a practice, as a routine, have really impacted your mental health in such a way. And it can be, again, overseen or overlooked when so many people come to me and they say, oh, yoga's just stretching, can't touch my toes, I'm not flexible enough to do yoga. I've heard people say they don't mind doing the poses but don't want to do the breathing thing. And it has so much more of an impact. I think sometimes you need to try it to really get into that groove and get into your body and find your natural flow. And as I've already said, maybe yoga isn't that route, which is why I've kind of moved into that space of being a wellbeing coach, which I'll get into on another episode. But yeah, it ended up growing, I think, really because I got that contract with a local Navy base. And any yoga teachers out there, do really look at how you can connect with businesses or corporations that really, really need to help employees connect and embrace and balance their mental well-being, not just physical well-being, but that mental well-being aspect. And I can remember a student who came to classes outside of those corporate, and she had a word with me at the end of the class and said, oh, where I work has started offering yoga classes, or they say they're yoga classes, but I don't think they're yoga classes. And I can remember having this big old battle in my mind, because there was this judgment of how can you call something yoga when it might not be yoga. And at the end of the day, if you're connecting to your mind, you're connecting to your body, you're connecting to your breath in some way, essentially that is yoga. So anything that allows you to do that is a form of yoga. But I allowed myself to have this moment of judgment of, oh, how could they do that? Scandalous. And then asked her where she worked. And ironically, it was me who was the yoga teacher at this place where she worked on this naval base. She was a civilian. And I highlighted it. And I was like, but it's such a beautiful way, because some people do have this stigma around certain things. So why not try it and trickle certain things in so people aren't aware? How many people do this? Maybe you do this if you have children, or you might have had this done to you as a child. But it's that we sneak in some of those extra vegetables. Like, you can, eat your greens, but it's like hidden amongst all the stuff you want to eat. Or I'm a big fan of a particular blender where I can remember it's like, let's make some ice cream, but we're going to put cabbage and all these sort of vegetables in raw, but blend it up and eat this as an ice cream. And you wouldn't know it had all this goodness in, and there's no rubbish, no sugar or anything horrible in there that is not good for you. So it's, why not wrap things up in a tool in a way that it allows people to experience something without them knowing it, uh, not straight away at least, because it helps them to be more open to experience it, because we all have that judgment. I can see it even now, 10 years later, when I say certain words in a yoga practice, in a yoga class, I'm guiding people through. It's like, right, we're going to move into plank. And maybe you just experienced it, that resistance that you sometimes feel when you hear a certain word, because it's like, oh, I'm going to do that, or I've got to do that. Oh, I don't like that pose. But it's amazing how we create this judgment in ourselves of how we think we're going to do in a particular pose, in a particular practice. And again, it's, for me, it's allowing the opportunity to at least try and experience something where you can get this beautiful connection. It's like I said last week, it, for me, yoga is just observing that connection of your mind and your body. So if you notice something comes up when I say we're going to do this particular pose or this particular practice, and it could be resistance, it's allowing yourself to observe it and sit with it and think, well, where has that come from? Where has that come from? And that's the beauty of the practice. And I honestly do not care how your body looks in a pose. Now, I might notice whether you're holding yourself and there's tension, or you might look uncomfortable, and then I'll make a suggestion, because from the outside, I'm observing that and I can pick that up. But it's also highlighting to you to really connect into embodying how your body feels and understanding that. So many, and I say that because so many people say, oh, I can't do this and I can't do this. But it's like, how often have you tried? How often have you tried something and then it didn't work one way, so you gave up? I can't do it, so I won't do it at all. And again, I said this on the episode last week. Maybe you've tried yoga, but you haven't found your teacher, or you haven't found your style, and that's perfectly fine. There are so many out there. And I think that's the beauty of so many people training to become yoga teachers. I know so many of my students that have gone on to become teachers, and some of them still teach. I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes in behind the scenes of being a yoga teacher, how many yoga teachers give up their own practice. This is the bit that really makes my heart ache. How many yoga teachers have given up their own practice to teach? They were students first and they loved the practice so much that they went on to do a teacher training. And ironically, the only evening they were available was the evening they came to a yoga class. And so the practice gets swapped out for the job, and that's where burnout happens. And there can be then that disconnect, and sometimes people then fall out of love with the practice because of that. And I can speak very clearly on that because I've had that experience myself. I ended up teaching way too many classes. Back in 2014, I changed from hiring halls. I still worked at the corporate side, but I was working at 2 bases and teaching 3, sometimes 4 classes there a week. Plus, I took over a studio space, which worked out better for me financially because I could spend the same amount of money but teach a lot more classes. But I went from teaching 1 class a day to up to 4 classes a day. My busiest day was Wednesday, and it's amazing. It was busy all the way up to March 2020, and then suddenly there was like nothing, or it went down to from 5 classes to 2 classes. And there was a moment where I had that real wake up call of, and I've had it a couple of times, so I should have known better, should have, but I allowed myself to overteach and burn out. And I think that's possible when you're enthusiastic about something and you just want to share it with other people, or you want to look after other people first. I think we have this belief that we should put everyone else first before ourselves. And that's where my well-being coaching comes through, of actually, you need to put your oxygen mask on first. You've got to look after yourself first. Taking care of yourself is part of taking care of other people. If you burn out, you can't look after other people. And I've had that. It's a horrible feeling when you have to message everyone on, say, a Sunday morning because you are so tired that you've made yourself unwell because you've burnt yourself out. And it was honoring that when I first picked that up, probably 2016. And then obviously again in 2020, really highlighted that, whoa, actually my days can be calmer. And I've really honored that as I've let go of my studio space. From that, I can use this space as much as possible and share it. And I had beginners classes and restorative classes and prenatal and postnatal and flow classes and workshops and day retreats. And it, on the outside, it probably seemed amazing. And I've had people tell me I made it look so easy. But realistically, when you're doing so much that's very, very physical, you do burn yourself out, which comes around to that. The more your energy, the more energy you use, the more energy you'll have. But then you kind of get to that point where you've also got to honor rest. And there's a big difference between sitting around and just using your mental capacity and going around and rushing around and teaching so many classes. And I was doing this, I would be going to a venue to teach stand-up paddleboard yoga and then coming home, having a shower, having something to eat, very briefly driving to a naval base, coming home, having something to eat, and then going back to another naval base and coming home. So a lot of driving and coming home, having something to eat, seeing the dogs, maybe getting to walk the dog, and then go to the yoga studio and teaching 2 classes, and then coming home. And it wasn't a healthy lifestyle. Really, when I look at my lifestyle audit, something else would be diving into was that I'd be eating dinner at about 9:30 and then trying to go to bed at 10:30. But obviously my body's digesting food. But it's that what I'm trying to highlight is there's the big difference between sitting around and using your mental capacity. You're mentally tired, you're mentally drained because you're on the computer all the time, but you're not moving your body, you're not getting this circulation, you're not getting this flow, and using energy to create energy to the other end of the spectrum, which I got to, which was just using so much energy that I was so burnt out. And it's just finding that beautiful middle ground, aka a lovely, beautiful balance. And that was part of the reason why I let go of the studio, because it just felt too much at that point. And it's really, really sad the amount of people I have, even now, over 2 years later, that ask me, will you open a studio again? And the short answer is no. I would love to be able to do more in person, but realistically, I feel like it's done. It's something I've experienced. It's something I created with love for the community, and I can look back with really fond memories. And I can think to myself, oh, wow, I did that. But no, I would not go back to owning a studio, or even the thought at the moment of renting a space. When I look, I just can't find something that I really love. And I love renting venues for well-being days, otherwise known as yoga retreats, or the weekend retreats, which is a lot of fun. And I really hope to start doing some more abroad or longer retreats again soon. So they are on the cards. But again, I've kind of tweaked and pivoted on how I really look at those days or those long weekends. Then it's not just yoga. We don't just do a physical movement practice. It's really something for everyone. And that's a big question I get is, can I come to this? I'm completely new to this. Can I join this? And the answer is yes. Come along and really be present in your mind, in your body, for that connection. And enjoy getting in touch with yourself, with who you really are. So I'm going to start wrapping up this episode here because I want to try and keep these short. I actually have no idea how long this is. And I will try and have them more a bit structured so I don't go a little bit rambly. I don't know, maybe rambly is a good one. I like the idea of us sitting together around the kitchen table and just having a natter, and it's that random conversation of, so how did you become a yoga teacher? So maybe that's answered some questions for you in this episode this Friday. And maybe I'm just tapping into that full moon in Gemini, that chatty Gemini energy. And I'm going to dive into even more next week. I'm going to start going into how I became a well-being coach and my love of a morning routine, something I never thought I could possibly do, but it happened. Here we are. And as I promised last week, I want every episode to finish with a journal prompt. Journaling is a really lovely way to connect with your mind, with your emotional body. And I think it is a very empowering practice to really elevate your well-being. So last week, you had your first prompt, which was, how do I feel right now? So you might come back to that one because this one links into it, but I want you to also ask yourself, and this will be a two-parter because of how it does flow, but if you're asking yourself how you feel right now, do you want to feel this way? Do you want to feel this way? And these are questions you can ask yourself first thing in the morning. Like, how are you feeling? Is it how you want to feel? And if it's not how you want to feel, how do you want to feel? This is the two-parter. Do you want to feel this way? And if the answer is yes, amazing. But if it's not, then how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And I'd love to know. So come and join me over on Instagram. I'm at @IamRachel_UK. This will be linked in the show notes. And send me a DM, send me a message. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on your yoga journey, your yoga practices, anything I've shared. If anything has triggered you, amazing. Go into it and come and join me in the DMs and let me know. Send me a message. I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on this. So thank you for joining me, and I shall see you next Friday.